All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Lynn Ladd, and I am representing the Ottawa Board of Trade this morning. Welcome to our webinar. Before we begin, I just want to give you a little bit of an update as to what the Ottawa Board of Trade has been up to in the last week or so. We continue to advocate for more information and clarity on the rent relief program that the government has put out. We are very, very pleased to see that Ottawa Public Health and the City of Ottawa released their business toolkits yesterday. There's more information available on that on our website and in upcoming newsletters, but they will have information in these toolkits on a responsible and successful reopening of the economy for different types of businesses. So please do check that out. You can always contact me if you'd like more information about that. That's an issue that our SME Council has been working very hard on and advocating for, so we are delighted to see that's finally arrived. And we just continue to collect stories from our members and other people in the business community to make sure that everyone is being accounted for in terms of their business needs, to make sure that people are not falling through the cracks. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our panelists today. I'm very excited about today's topic because I am a firm believer in the necessity for a really strong financial management function within your business, and digitizing it is absolutely the way to go. COVID or not COVID, this is a very important step for organizations. I feel that the financial system is like the foundation of your home. And you can make your home look very pretty, but without a solid foundation, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So without any further ado, I am going to tell you about our presenters today. Our first presenter is Margo Crawford. She's the president, CEO, and founder of the Business Sherpa Group, where she and her team of more than 80 associates have been involved with over 300 plus companies throughout North America, both profit and not-for-profit, from formation stage through to sale. She was a co-founder of Meriton Networks and was instrumental in building a company with locations around the world and raising over $75 million in equity financing and related M&A transactions. Excuse me. Margo has been a business and HR leader in technology companies, education, and NFP sector organizations for the past 30 years. As a recognized thought leader in the area of small and mid-sized business strategy, human resources, and governance, Margo has been invited to speak on many occasions about creating optimal business performance through HR strategies, organization design, aligning business strategy with shareholder strategy, and other topics, largely focusing small and medium enterprises as well as emerging and growing companies. Margo's business passion lies in the long-term success of small and medium enterprises, as well as kickstarting the careers of young professionals. Margo's joined today by Brandon Brown, CPA candidate, the accounting team lead at Business Sherpa Group. He loves working with organizations eager to innovate, as he is well-versed in helping organizations digitize their finance function. By leveraging technology, Brandon works to find efficiencies in workflows and effectively provide organizations with timely and accurate financial reports. So we have some great speakers here today, and they are very knowledgeable on the subject matter. So I am going to now turn this over to Margo to get started.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Lynn. And just while Brandon, what's that?
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Okay, I thought I was on mute.
Sorry, Lynn. It just says host disabled attendee screen sharing. So.
Oh. That is not what I wanted to do. Okay, can you try that now?
Yeah, very good.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, so just while Brandon's bringing up our slides, and you'll put that in slide view mode. Thanks, Brandon. So first of all, I want to thank you, Lynn, as well as the Ottawa Board of Trade for inviting us to speak on this topic. I'm a real supporter and believer of the Ottawa Board of Trade. And I think they've really shown themselves to stand up in a big way during this time, helping a lot of different businesses at lots of different stages with lots of different situations and really finding ways to support them in incredibly meaningful ways. So anyway, so I'm grateful to be even part of that, both myself and the team. what I wanted to do is I'm going to spend a bit of time, not much, just kind of giving some context to why this is such an important topic, and then really hand it over to Brandon to take you through the guts of what we've learned with, digitizing finance functions within small, mid-sized businesses. What I would say is, to Lynn's point, is that since 2008, we've been working primarily with small and mid-sized businesses. So that's under 100 employees, right down to micro, like 2 employees. And, really establishing in some instances, or in other times complementing the finance function and the HR function, knowing that those functions need to operate well inside of businesses. So with that, we've gotten the benefit of working with a lot of different businesses, which gives us more context to share with you. So maybe, Brandon, I'll just jump into, if you don't mind going to the first slide. Just in terms of context, I was speaking about this recently and have been actually writing about this as well. The idea of when I'm working with CEOs or businesses, in terms of business strategies, what I often say, and what the context is that, look, at every leader, every business has key gears that they have to operate in. And these are the 5 categories. People have different categories, but fundamentally, these are the gears that businesses have to attend to. And certainly it's on the mind of any leader, whether it's a leader of the business or leader of the function, they're thinking about these pieces. And that's no less true now during this time of crisis. In fact, as Lynn mentioned, I was a co-founder of a tech company before Business Sherpa Group, Merita Networks. And when I was reflecting back, there was actually a couple of, I actually went through 2 previous financial crisis, the dot-com bust in 2001 and the financial crisis in 2008. And, when I was reflecting back, and the experiences of that time really showcased that, yes, indeed, all of these gears are in play. The reality is that under crisis, whether it's a COVID pandemic crisis or just a business crisis, pretty much we're always focused on the finance gear, and frankly, it's been there for quite some time. We're just looking at cash, looking at money. The reality is, though, at some point in time, these other gears have to get moving. You have to start thinking about, what else do you need to do? What else will play out? You can't sort of stay in that one gear. And that's really what I'm finding now, as well as when I reflect back. When I look back, I noticed back in 2001 as well as 2008, there was a real pattern of how business reacted to those crises, and it's happening now. And I sort of identified them as an initial phase where we react and we retrench. But then eventually you get to this point where you get some resolve and say, okay, we're going to get through this somehow. And then there's even a phase of reinvention. What can we be? And it's that movement forward that we really want to focus on, because yes, of course, you have to shore up your business and think about, how to get through an initial phase in that reaction period. But soon you start realizing, hey, this is long-term, but also we need to be able to do things better. We have to de-risk the business going forward. And that's really moving into some of the other gears. And what's interesting is when I look back and, during my experiences, but also what studies have shown. So there's a lot of studies that have looked at those previous recessionary periods that were quite shocking, devastated businesses in the economy and jobs. And there's been a lot of studies about that, and pretty much uniformly looking at which companies not just survived, but which ones came out ahead and surged ahead of the others post-crisis. And the netting it out is essentially businesses that take on both a defensive strategy, but also an offensive strategy. So it wasn't just about hunkering down, protecting your cash, incubating and sort of curling up in a ball. It was those companies that figured out, okay, there's some areas we do need to invest in. We do need to be thinking about what is next and how to move forward. And it's pretty overwhelming, the evidence that those businesses that were able to think really sharply about where to invest and what type of investments to make that's going to get you to that new state is really important to success. And I think what I feel now is businesses certainly, and particularly small businesses, we saw that we're certainly in this phase of feeling very nervous, trying to understand their situation, protecting cash, finding access to more cash, whether it was programs or whatever. But most have kind of sorted out beyond just the rebound, we got to get back to being open in some cases. But other businesses that remained open realized their world is going to change. And now we have to start thinking about what does that look like. I often say this is not the time, obviously, to do full-scale strategic planning in small businesses, but I am really, with our businesses and some CEOs I'm working with, I am suggesting you should be doing some micro-strategy thinking. And some of that might be doing an environmental scan and trying to imagine what the future world really looks like and what has changed, what has permanently changed and will never go back, what has just accelerated that you need to address now that you thought you'd be addressing 5 years ago, or 5 years from now, excuse me, or what's brand new. So that strategic thinking is definitely important, and you have to be doing some of that, crystal balling, as well as evaluating how you are as an organization. What's your SWOT? Redoing that SWOT in the context of a newer landscape and understanding, okay, you might have a new perspective on where you're strong and what you need to protect or even double down on, but also where you're weak. And some weaknesses are just things that need to be shed, maybe products or services that aren't going to be relevant. Others is you better strengthen those because they will be important. And really, it's that piece that has led both us at Business Sherpa Group, but also with the clients we're working with in businesses, thinking, okay, what things do we really need to move forward now? What do we need to strengthen in light of a new emerging world? And that is really getting to what we're looking at now. So if we go to the next slide, Brandon. So to me, this is all about moving forward. What do we need to execute on? So of course, I really think that some time spent on what is important and moving forward longer term. What near-term choices do you want to be making right now, but with a mind on your longer term goals? Where are you getting to? What do you need to protect, but what investments do you need to make? And what resources and supplies will you need for that journey going forward? So it's very, very, very clear to me that technology will play a role in every single business. I think we can all agree that that technology strategy that might have been longer term, 4 months ago, has now just moved front and center into your strategies. And the areas that we're seeing the highest prioritization are in 3 areas. One is definitely digitizing that finance function, why we want to speak on this today. You cannot have your financial system fragile and not accessible for your business continuity. It needs to be in place. And so this is a pathway we've been on for the last 2 years, and Brandon's going to share his findings as well as knowledge and research. And we've been working with a lot of clients, helping them through that phase and getting them there. The other area, 2 other areas we're not going to talk about today, but it's information management. Where are your records and your files? What's your file structure? And how do you access them and make sure they're accessible in a way that's useful for now, this more virtualized environment, as well as how are you going to engage your customers and your clients with a more digital experience. But today is about digitizing the finance function, and I really want to focus on that. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to hand it over to Brandon to share what he has, and we're very happy to take questions at the end of this. Over to you, Brandon.
Thanks, Margo. So as Margo's alluded to, we all know technology is changing the way we work in so many ways. And in order to thrive as an organization of the future, it's going to be important that organizations are adapting to this changing environment, both operationally as well as in their service delivery. And one key area that many businesses rely on outdated non-technology-based methods is in their finance functions. Many organizations realize these outdated methodologies come with many barriers and inefficiencies, and this pandemic is putting pressure more than ever to digitize their finance functions. And in light of the pandemic putting pressure on so many organizations to accelerate their transition to the way of the future, we wanted to share our learnings and key takeaways when transitioning to a digitized finance practice. So first of all, there's so many benefits that a digitized finance function brings to your organization, such as creating efficiencies, continuity, as Margo mentioned, cost savings, strong internal controls, reduction in errors, and faster cash collections. And the challenges that many organizations face when they want to move in the direction is the time, knowledge, and resources to bring it to life, as well as the real challenge of how to select technology to improve current processes and workflows. What is key is that systems integrate with each other so that information flows through the systems and then the flow of cash back through these systems. You know, the integration is a big challenge we want to highlight, as there's so much technology out there, and you'll find that none of them are really cookie cutter to your organization's unique intricacies and workflows that need to be maintained, which makes choosing them a strenuous task. So it's important that the right information is flowing through these systems and integrating with each other so that the cash moves based on good data, based on the requirement for your business. Fortunately, our finance team has spent a lot of time researching and testing these different technologies within small and medium-sized businesses. And what we've learned is that it's important to gain a deep understanding of your entire processes, workflows, and the technology you currently have in place, and then taking a phased approach to work through the change management aspects of implementing new ways of working. As an example, we use this approach to get organizations to a digitized finance function. So phase one, design and plan the change management phase. And phase two, cloud-based accounting system implementation and training. Phase three, document collection, processing, and management tool implementation and training. And then finally, phase four, bill payment processing, tool implementation and training. So just to get into the first phase, phase one is the design, plan, and change management phase. So before investing in a digital transformation strategy, you're going to want to look for what isn't quite working in your operations. So where do you regularly need workarounds or have to stop a process unexpectedly to fetch more information or involve another person? These are likely areas that digitization can improve. Then you're going to want to think about the resources that you have or need to redesign your operations so that technology adds value by making offerings and processes better, faster, cheaper, and more convenient. As an example, our team always focuses first on understanding what the current processes and workflows are in place and help to identify where there are inefficiencies. So from here, you know, we can start to think about how technology can support your current processes to improve your workflows and design a digital transformation roadmap for implementing these technologies and redesigning workflows to meet your operational needs. The ultimate goal of digitizing your finance practice should address inefficiencies in your workflows, complement human touch, and leverage automation, which is achieved through what we like to call continuous accounting. Continuous accounting is essentially to distribute our workload evenly over an accounting period by embedding the month-end tasks into the day-to-day activities. It's pretty typical that we'll see organizations practicing month-end accounting where essentially you get a pile of paper at the end of the month and all the data entry and reconciliations happen then, which, as you can imagine, is one of the most time-consuming and stressful times for finance teams. Yet these time-consuming tasks are still an essential part of the process to ensure that organizations are getting accurate information that will not only enable business decisions, but also ensure compliance with governing bodies. This idea of continuous accounting elevates the goal for these processes to occur day to day so that month, quarter, and year end are efficient. And there was actually an American Productivity and Quality Center benchmarking survey that was conducted on general accounting standards. And the result of the survey was that the bottom 25% of performing companies of 2,300 organizations questioned said they needed 10 or more calendar days to complete their monthly period close. compared to the top 25% of performing companies who completed the monthly close in 5 days or less. So clearly there seems to be some sort of correlation between performance and monthly closing periods. Continuous accounting drives a faster month end, giving businesses timelier access to information, which is really valuable to SMEs as it'll give them a competitive advantage and free up a lot of their time to think more strategically. You know, we're using these technologies to streamline what we've always done while providing greater efficiencies, higher accuracy, and more reliable financial statements because we can deal with transactions as they occur rather than scrambling at the end of the month to pull it all together. We know technology is changing the game, and it's important for businesses to be at the forefront of this change. So moving into phase 2 is the cloud-based accounting system implementation and training. So as a foundation, there are 3 key areas that we look to. First, where we typically see the most inefficiencies in organization systems and workflows. And obviously the first being in your accounting system. If you're still on a desktop-based accounting system, this is where you'll want to start by moving your systems into the cloud. What we often see is companies implementing these cloud-based accounting software and stopping here. Just thinking that, you know, implementing a cloud-based accounting software is enough. But really, if you think about it, it's only the tip of the iceberg when we think about the efficiencies that cloud-based accounting software brings to the profession in terms of processes and workflows. It's not enough to implement these softwares and think that they're going to make dramatic changes to your business or that they're going to replace your accountant. The real value comes from leveraging these technologies to automate and streamline workflows, allowing for accountants to spend more time helping businesses work with the knowledge and insights from their financial statements to ultimately make better, timely decisions. As an example, when we're thinking about which accounting systems to choose, we're looking at how different technologies complement a current process by creating efficiencies and workflows and how different systems communicate to one another. If you're not looking at the big picture in the design phase, very often you can end up with a bigger mess than what you started with. And we always recommend that before moving to the next phase of implementation, that people using the systems are comfortable with them. Which brings us to, should say, phase 3, which is our next area where we often see inefficiencies, which is in document collection, processing, and management. So financial documents like bank statements, bills, and receipts are essential documents to bookkeeping and are often very low on a small business's list of priorities. And as a result, it makes for collecting, processing, and managing these documents one of the most time-consuming bookkeeping tasks, taking anywhere from 8 to 14 hours a month. In fact, it was estimated that bookkeepers spend about 30% of their time chasing documents and manually entering data. So Hubdock would be one of a few cloud-based solutions to this problem. Essentially, it's a document collection, a document management and processing system where clients can easily upload all their bills and receipts to one centralized place, making the collection of documents a lot more streamlined. And the best part about it is that Hubdock extracts all the key information from the documents and will upload them directly into your cloud-based accounting system like QuickBooks with all the supporting documentation attached. So the app's ability to do this data extraction, saves a ton of time chasing and manually entering data. What previously took 8 to 14 hours a month now takes anywhere from 2 to 3 hours per month with the implementation of an app like Hubdock. Very quickly, you can see some of the benefits of having a paperless central location for all your financial documentation. It's also a great addition for associations who often have to go through an annual audit, as your books essentially become audit-proofed with all the supporting documents attached to each entry made in the system, making it extremely easy to kind of go back and search for the documents that you need. Yeah, in this phase of implementing a tool like Hubdock, it's important to be thinking about how it integrates with your accounting system and how people will be expected to use the app. The last thing you want to do is choose an app like Hubdock and then later find out that it does not integrate with your accounting system, which, as you can imagine, can create more steps and inefficiencies in your workflows. In addition, you'll want to set out standard operating procedures and diligently train your staff to work within this standard so that the flow of information is seamless. All too often, we see organizations using these technologies as a free-for-all, which again creates inefficiencies, increases the risk of error, and frustration for those who have to process these documents into the accounting system. And then finally, the next big area where we often see inefficiencies and outdated methodologies is in bill payment processing. So there's a lot of things that will get in the way of an efficient workflow when it comes to processing payments. For example, back and forth communication, obtaining approvals, printing checks, and or logging in and out of the bank to process wires and EFTs, just to name a few. In addition, out of all the different forms of payments, checks are the most susceptible to fraud and the most common form of payment, and have cost businesses more than any other type of fraud in recent years. So Kudo, again, would be one of a few cloud-based solutions to this problem, as it's an accounts payable processing system. So it's essentially a one-stop shop to manage all your payments. And just want to highlight, I'm choosing to talk about Kudo over other payment processing apps because it builds off the Hubdock to QuickBooks online workflow I've been talking about so far. So, the importance of choosing technology that integrates well with systems and processes already in place to further help streamline workflows and enable this idea of continuous accounting. So very basic, how it works is that Kudo syncs with QuickBooks Online and your financial institution. So Kudo will automatically pull in any outstanding payables from QBO and allow you to send payments to suppliers without the need for logging into the bank to set up EFTs or printing checks for that matter. All you need is their email or their banking details and you can send a payment. What is also great about it is that you can set up tiered approval channels so that payments are being approved before they ever get sent out. This is a great feature, again, for organizations that need, for example, dual signatures on checks or have layered approval channels that could be based on certain dollar thresholds, for example. Depending on the approval channels for the organization, once a payment is set up, an email would be automatically sent to the appropriate approvers with the supporting documentation attached that originally got pushed through Hubdock before getting processed. So implementing an AP processing app like Kudo has the ability to save organizations 70% of their current cost to process vendor payments by saving on paper and improving workflow efficiencies. It's also a great app for your internal controls, as there's a clear audit trail of the documents moving through the different systems, so you can ensure compliance with internal policies, and the automated approvals help to reduce the risk of fraud. So digitizing your finance function and working towards this idea of continuous accounting and standardizing your workflows is not an easy task. And there's so many tools out there to choose from that, selecting and implementing them can seem overwhelming. But, it's important to note that it does not happen overnight, and it's not going to replace your accountant, but rather allow them to spend less time on these routine but time-consuming bookkeeping tasks and more time interpreting the results from your financial statements, bringing far more value to your organization than they did in the past. The idea is that successful technology investments should let you accomplish more with fewer people. Taking these steps to work towards the gold standard of continuous accounting and digitizing your finance is imperative for the future of businesses. By starting small and taking this phased approach, you can get some early wins by addressing your most painful problems you want to solve and assessing how various technologies can integrate together to solve those problems. Like Margo mentioned, it requires strategic planning and an initial investment in time to develop a roadmap for what that future might look like for your organization to get to this gold standard of continuous accounting.
So thanks very much, Brandon. That's kind of a very, very high overview. And I just wanted to add a few points before we open it up to questions. And I think the things that, what we want to emphasize, what we see, first of all, the idea of whether actually it's the finance function or any of the technology systems that you're thinking about, even as a small business, I really want to emphasize the need up front to do a process review. Understand your processes versus selecting a technology that assumes your process looks for what they've designed it for. So understanding your processes and how information flows through your system is really key. And then that phasing approach that you want to put into place. Just a couple of other points. I know some questions are coming in, Lynn. So the idea of doing that phasing approach, whatever works for you, but knowing start at that process planning, think about the bigger system, and then look at the tools. The integration is so key. We know a client that they did this whole thing, they selected everything integrated, and then found out nothing integrated with their bank. So the bank partner is really important in this, and they definitely get into, they have cash management systems and so on. Do I have just a couple more minutes, Lynn, or do you need me to be quiet? I just have a few more points.
No, go right ahead, please.
Going? All right. I won't talk long, but I do want to sort of say the banking systems, like I say, they have a lot of cash management technologies. It's focused on the cash management piece, and it's not going to do all these other things. It has to ultimately integrate with your accounting system and making sure the right information flows in both directions. So I just wanted to mention that. The other thing I wanted to speak to, you notice that we really didn't get into payroll systems. So payroll obviously is a piece of the finance function, but I would say payrolls right now, payroll systems, there's very few people, we come across very few clients that have not already integrated payroll with their accounting system. And it will, most of them, ADP, Ceridian, WagePoint, etc., have good integrations. So we weren't focusing on that piece, but obviously that's a piece of it as well. I do think sometimes people think they've digitized their finance function if they've got an automated payroll, plus they've put a cloud-based accounting system, forgetting about all of those other workflows that Brandon mentioned, which are really the time sucks and what really adds layers of effort and also error and so on to your system. So the other final 2 points I had was the apps. The apps that we were showing are the ones that, we're not an advocate for one over the other, but we have done a lot of research and tried several. So these are some good ones. There are other good ones. The one thing I would emphasize is seeing how they work with each other. There's some apps that simply don't integrate well with other apps, and you have to understand those. So we've done a lot of research, and that's why Brandon mentioned one. He said, because I know it works well with Hubdocks, as an example. And that's really important, that sort of planning thing. And my final point is that, because I know that there's some finance professionals and accountants on the line who, can be rest assured we're not an advocate for eliminating the profession in any way, shape, and form. In fact, most businesses we go into put the digital in, and then we do the bookkeeping support for them. To me, what this does is it buys you back some of the mind share of the professional background of an individual, their intelligence, and now they can be focusing on those high value activities. Their time is not sucked by going and finding documents everywhere. So it's really a refinement of all of your resources and complements what you already have as a team. So, but it's going to optimize and improve the performance of the business for sure. So maybe I'll just stop it there, but I just wanted to kind of have those few other points there. Then I'll toss it over to you. Maybe we'll get some questions going.
Okay, thank you so much, Margo and Brandon. Before we go into the Q&A session, I would like to take a moment and share some information with you about some upcoming webinars that we have. And I'd also like to take the time to thank our there we go, to thank our sponsors, because we are a not-for-profit and we cannot do programs like this without their support. So first, I would like to take a moment to thank our community partner, the Ottawa Citizen, and of course, Business Sherpa Group, who is our presentation partner today. Thank you for everything that you do for Ottawa Board of Trade, and our event sponsor, Enbridge Gas. They have stepped up and offered to support and sponsor a number of programs that we have running right now. So I just want to say a huge thank you to them for allowing us to bring webinars like this to you today. Now, in terms of webinars, I just want to quickly run through a couple of really exciting ones that we have coming up. Tomorrow, we are launching a brand new affinity program for our members. It's called Barter Pay, and it's an amazing way to get the goods and products that you need for your business without depleting your cash reserves right now. So I do encourage you to check out this webinar. There's a registration link on our website so that you can join it. But it's a really, really interesting program, and I encourage you to check it out. We are running a series called Wellness Wednesdays. Our next Wellness Wednesday is going to be on May 27th, and it's going to feature Gavin Broom from Freeform Fitness, and he's going to spend an hour talking about motivation and why we have such a hard time getting motivated and how to stay motivated. Ottawa Board of Trade firmly believes that the health of our local economy is intertwined completely with the physical and mental well-being of our workforce, our population, our consumers. So I think this is going to be a very interesting presentation. We also have coming up, in terms of practical business webinars, our next one on May 26th is going to feature the team from Rhapsody Strategies, and they will talk about rethinking your business. On May 28th, Scott Moran from Bytown Ventures is going to lead us in a discussion about keeping your leadership team meetings effective in the face of disruption. And who doesn't want that to happen these days? On June the 4th, John Harlovich from MNP is going to talk about a somewhat sensitive topic, and that is managing debt in a time of uncertainty. John is going to unpack some of the options that are available to businesses. Hopefully they won't have to take advantage of them, but everyone should know what their options are. And on June the 9th, there's going to be a team from KPMG talking about navigating the new world. And in particular, they're going to be focusing on cybersecurity, business interruption insurance, and valuation of your business in a volatile environment. So all of our webinars are on our event calendar. You can check them out at any time, and I encourage you to do so. We've had a number of members step up and say they'd like to share some information and help other people in the business community. And as you can see from today's webinar, there's some really great, solid, practical advice being shared out there. So please take advantage. So I think we can turn it back to our Q&A session now. And so the first question is mine. And I have a question for Brandon. So in terms of reporting, which of the accounting software programs has the greatest flexibility in terms of the design of your chart of accounts and then the reports and statements that it can generate?
So I think they're all pretty good with this, but I mean, there's different things you can add on to it. But I'd say, you know, QuickBooks or Xero both have a lot of flexibility in terms of manipulating your chart of accounts. But all that to say, like, it does start with your accounting system, and then you can build on that to automate it more. So you can implement things like Spotlight reporting or Fathom reporting, which helps to, you know, automate the reporting process at month end, so that, you know, you close your month and then automatically it flushes out a set of dashboards that has your KPIs and all that kind of stuff to summarize it nicely. But it starts within the accounting system, whether it's QBO or Xero, like that design piece.
And what about project accounting for programs and things? I noticed there's a couple of not-for-profits on our call today, mm-hmm. and often their projects will extend over a financial reporting period. So is there flexibility now in the online software accounting to allow you to do that?
Yeah. Yeah, and we see this a lot ourselves as well. And like this is where a lot of intricacies come into play with reporting, because a funder's fiscal year might be different than their fiscal year. So you're running, you might have to put in multiple budgets, but you can all build in classes or locations so that you can report by spending on a particular funder, or what have you, a contribution agreement, or however that looks. But again, QuickBooks and Xero as a cloud-based system both have flexibility to kind of build that out so that you're kind of, you're not pulling everything into Excel and then trying to manipulate the data so that you can give reports to your contribution agreements. You can do it within the system so that it summarizes. So you just, run your report and there you go. You don't have to worry about it. Because we do see at first, most of the time, organizations where, they're just running a straight P&L and then they're trying to do everything in Excel and, reallocating, and it's just a nightmare.
Yeah, it's not an efficient use of time, and it's also risky in terms of, those Excel formulas can get changed so easily by mistake.
Well, yeah. And then even if you think you close a period and then something gets added, it's not reflected in your Excel spreadsheet, right? Like it doesn't, there's a gap in between like how up to date the information is.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, thank you. So now we have actual questions from other people, so I'll move along to those. Our next one is from Carlos. He'd like to know if you have some resource for the migration process to switch from desktop accounting to cloud accounting software. And can you provide some advice on accounting software that's easy to integrate with a fundraising platform? So yes, I was right. There are a lot of not-for-profits on our call today.
So in terms of the migration, like we can support some like organizations with that. We do a lot, like what I just went through, we do a lot with organizations. So, we'll go in, do the design phase with you, figure out, where your inefficiencies are. And then, we can take you through each phase of implementation. But I would say QuickBooks, if you don't want to use us, QuickBooks has a good team of resources who can support the transformation from desktop to cloud.
Brandon, do you think it's fair to say that even though companies like QuickBooks will help you migrate your desktop file into the cloud, that you really can't overlook that first step of reviewing your chart of accounts to see if it's really worth replicating the entire thing all over again? Like, allow the software companies to do the heavy work, but somebody needs to look at that chart of accounts and say, is it reporting to the board of directors? Is it reporting to our stakeholders or our shareholders? Are they getting the information that they need quickly and easily? And if not, now's the time to revise it before we make that migration process happen. Is that right?
Well, yes, you want to definitely think about that to a certain degree, but like moving from desktop to cloud, like I wouldn't redesign everything in desktop and then move to the cloud. I would do your transition first and then redesign it within the new system, so that you're not, doing it in one and then it gets to the other one and then you have to restart.
Right.
Yes, understand where you're going with that and which system can support that, but it would come after the transition. That answers your question.
If I could just add to that, I think that generally speaking, that whole assessment at that front end is understanding, yes, is your GL set up the way it needs to be for your business, but you don't want to migrate a mess. Mm-hmm. And so either you have to, you either put it into shape initially, or you plan the structure you want to move to and make sure that migration happens that way. And I find that too in the information management transitions that we do when we're trying to move clients over onto, you know, whether it's SharePoint or whatever, you know, the question always is, do you want to take the current architecture of all your files and systems and just put it over there? Because it's probably not organized the way you want to. There's probably stuff to be archived, etc. So it's not that you have to clean it up first and then move, but you have to understand you're not just replicating that mess and morphing it over.
Right. So Brandon, the second half of Carlos' question was about how easily accounting softwares will integrate with fundraising platforms. Now, I'm going to presume that a company like QuickBooks Online has probably allowed a method for integrating with most of the major fundraising platforms. Is that correct?
Well, see, yeah, this is something that you think about in your design phase, like, you know, what are your fundraising platforms for one, and then looking at whether or not QuickBooks or Xero or whatever it is can support that before, you know, moving to that system. But what I'll say, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
That's okay.
Just while you're getting it back, I will say one thing on the fundraising line. What I found before was that there was so many customized system for fundraising type organizations that were developed because there wasn't good solutions around reporting for you know, fundraising and receipting and all of that sort of stuff, and you know, grants, etc. And so there was a lot of stuff that was customized, and now you know, the resistance of a lot of organizations to move off that because it was customized. But I do think that that has been addressed, moving particularly now over to cloud system with a lot of the old accounting online versions that didn't cut it, recognizing they have to move to that. That's just a general observation, but
yeah, and the way the whole like QuickBooks, for example, like the way they've designed their system is so that a lot of different technologies can plug into it. So like you say, like there's a good chance that, you know, a lot of the fundraising platforms out there will plug into it. If not that one, others probably will.
Yeah, and that's not just obviously for fundraising. Where you see that, where we've seen that same kind of dynamic play out is almost in any sector. You know, law firms have very specific legal systems for their finances, right? And that tie into their billing systems. Real estate companies have, you know, so you have all these very specialized, almost ERP systems for how they can invoice, and have tried to kind of match it into their accounting system. So all of a sudden you've had all these very specialized accounting systems for an industry or sector. And you know, people say, oh, who has expertise on this thing or that thing because it was built that way. But I think that whole idea that those have now, you know, you've got systems that were integrated. I mean, QuickBooks Online only came in place in the last, when did it, I mean, it was in my era of
4 or
Business
5
Sherpa,
years ago.
I remember it. When was it? 2012?
Yeah, it hasn't been very long.
Not been that long. And so they've got at a lot of these issues that were not historically being addressed. In fact, I think many were abandoning development on any desktop systems, knowing that they were moving to online. So a lot of those issues that were very sector specific, you know, were addressed moving over to the online versions. That's certainly my recollection. So I think there's ways that they do work.
Carlos, did you want to unmute yourself? Did you have any other questions that you wanted to specifically ask Brandon and Margo while we have them here?
Maybe.
Hello.
Oh, there he is.
Thank you, Brandon and Margo. Yes, my question with the fundraising platform is because right now we have the issue that we have to we do double entry, one entry in fundraising, and then we have to do another entry in our accounting system. It's painful to try to reconcile every month and the end of the year, so that is a big issue for us. And I was analyzing the last year to try to switch the software, and I believe that point is the most important for me to decide what kind of software we're gonna choose.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, you'll definitely want to look at that. And like, you know, we can kind of quarterback that too with you. So if you need support or have any kind of questions on that as you kind of go down that path, feel free to reach out.
Okay, thank you.
One other point I was just going to raise, because I see we're just coming towards the end. It wasn't a question, but something that was raised with me. And I just thought I would just make the point that someone else made to me privately here. I won't reveal who, but the idea that when you're doing these things, you absolutely have to have the support up front from the CEO or your senior management team. That going at this and understand and trying to just move forward without kind of the strategic endorsement and tone from your leadership, that this is something that is fundamentally imperative for the business long term. The good news is a pandemic just came through and put organizations at risk in exactly this area. So the moment to sort of understand the strategic importance of doing something like this, when it might have just been seen as kind of a laundry list of future things to get to, we'll decide when we'll invest in that, I think has become front and center around, from a risk management perspective, and knowing for continuity in the business, this can't continue. And I don't think anyone believes that they're just waiting till they can get back to their old manual systems. Because once we go through this, and of course we can expect that businesses will be on off in terms of the conditions that we're living in now, you know, there will be another pandemic that will come through, maybe not a pandemic, but a threat. And you can expect that we will live in a world where, you know, we might be in a stage of red, yellow, green, and in red, you're all working from home. And, you know, so for business continuity, I think this is kind of accelerated up to the top of business strategies. And if there was one area to spend a bit of money in right now, it's here, whether that's actually getting support, like Brandon was saying, or just new technologies or more time and resources on it.
Absolutely. There's a couple of points that Margo and Brandon have made that I just want to actually repeat, because I think the advice was just so strong. And that is one of them being, to make this kind of a change within your organization, you really need to have that top down from the CEO buy-in. And yes, your accounting function doesn't do just numbers. It has to support the strategic initiatives of the organization. And so that's a huge, huge consideration. And the other piece that I wanted to, now I've got Brandon's issue and I can't remember where I was going with this.
We're all
contagious.
syndrome.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. You know what, it'll come back to me in a second, but there was another thing that you had both touched on that I thought, that's such strong advice. But, you know, again, I'm biased. I think every organization, no matter how large or how small, needs to have solid financial management systems in place, including the choice of going digital. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. All I could think of when this whole thing started and the work from home orders started flowing in is all of those businesses and companies that were still working on everything manually, and how much more challenging their job was to have to go down to the office and get checks signed and take them around, get signatures if there's a dual signature requirement. And I truly hope that if there's just one organization that goes digital because of this webinar, you have really saved somebody a lot of time and heartache, for sure.
That's right.
Yeah, accounting.
I would say that's a really great point, Lynn, the idea that, you know, we saw that with our clients. There were several that were very manual and they were quickly scrambling, trying to gather documents. I can't tell you how many clients we had who switched from manual checks to EFTs. And, you know, so that was great. That's cash management. That's the first step. But started recognizing the need to do that and just really shifting. The other area where we saw a huge problem, which I've referenced before, is around not so much IT, like your email and your systems. Those were generally pretty robust. It was your information management. Where are your files? And how are they organized? How do we collaborate easily on those and trying to migrate those? And you'll be shocked how many digital files you have. We just did a transition ourselves from Dropbox to Teams, and we had almost 1 million files.
Oh, we
So-
didn't. We didn't have a million files.
No. Well, it's
Kevin.
not hard to get there, unfortunately. It's faster than you might realize. But
Yes.
Anyway, I just think the importance of really thinking strategically in this moment, even though we're tempted to just preserve ourselves, I think you have to be thinking forward.
Yeah. So I did just think about, remember what it was that I wanted to point out, and that is today, with so many businesses struggling, especially with cash, the revenue is down. They're trying to manage a business. They're trying to make sound business decisions. If you're not digital, if you're not online, you're not making timely decisions. And right now, it's so critical to have completely up-to-the-date information. It's not that it's impossible to do it manually. Some people can, and they do it very well, but it's not the most efficient use of their time. And an accounting professional should really be looking at the thought that goes behind the entries and not the data entry. That's not what an accounting professional should be wasting their time doing. Sorry, spending their time doing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, they're usually pretty expensive, so you don't really want them to be plugging away, putting data into a system when they can be bringing real value and analyzing your statements and kind of reporting against KPIs to kind of make sure you're on the right track, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, so I guess, I mean, that's about it. And then as, thank you again, Lynn. I'll let you wrap up, but I just want to say from behalf of us and our team that we're really happy to be able to do this. And as Brandon said, you know, I think that with this thinking, you know, you might be able to tackle this. If you do need help, we're very happy to chat with you. Like I say, it's often this quarterbacking the whole thing and getting right through to the data migration, etc. Happy to do any of that. Just reach out, of course. But I think there's some good insights here that might set you off on the right track.
Absolutely.
And if you just have a quick question on something, just call, just ask. Be happy to answer.
Yeah. So you can either reach out to me for Margo and Brandon's contact information if your question is urgent and pressing, or when we send out the slide decks, you'll see that their contact information is there and available to you. I do encourage you to reach out to them if you have more questions. The organizations and members that have stepped forward to offer these webinars, they truly want to help the business community right now. So it's not an imposition. It's not a hardship for you to reach out to them. Take advantage of this offer and get the right answers and get started and go digital. Yay!
Right.
All right. So I think that we're going to wrap up here. It looks like we've addressed everybody's immediate questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. And a huge thank you to Brandon and Margo from Business Sherpa Group for sharing this information. And hopefully we'll see you all in the digital age.
Great.
All right. Thank you. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.